Hi everyone, it's Lisa Mears. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today I'm going to be making 30 cards using Carta's Christmas Cheer collection. And you will see 26 different card designs. There are actually 4 cards out of the 30 where I used the same design, but you will see 26 different card designs in this video. So here's a look at just a few of the cards I made, and I'm going to show you the design process and all of the products that I used to make these cards. So here are the products in the Carta Christmas Cheer collection that I am using. I have the sticker book, the enamel dots, as well as the 6x6 paper pad, and I am going to be using the 6x6 mega paper pad. Now there is a regular 6x6 paper pad available, and the only difference between the regular one and the mega pad is the mega pad has 48 double-sided papers and the regular 6x6 has 24 double-sided papers, but all of the patterns are similar. You do get more papers in the mega pack. You also get a couple of sheets of sentiments, which you will see as I flip through here, and you also get some solids in this mega pack. I think these tags as well are unique to the mega pack, but everything else is the same. Here's the solids you get, and then here are the sentiment strips that you get, and I think you get a couple of sheets of those. So that's really the only difference. So if you want to purchase this collection and the mega pack is not available, you can always pick up the smaller 6x6. There's also 12 by 12 papers available in this collection. I also picked up the sticker sheet, and I will be incorporating stickers on my cards today. You get 2 of each of these stickers that you see as I flip through this sticker pack. This collection also has ephemera pieces, which I did not pick up. But I will provide links to all of the items in this collection down in the description box in case you are interested in purchasing this collection. I do bring in some solid color cardstock from my stash, so in addition to the colors you see here, I also bring in some white cardstock as well. So I also want to mention that I will have up close pictures as well as card measurements on my blog at lisamearsdesigns.com. So if you're interested in duplicating any of these cards, please head over to my blog and check that out. For my first card, I'm using this Tall and Skinny card sketch by Mojo Monday. It's sketch number 339. And I have 2 ovals that I die cut, and I just layered those together. I cut 2 pieces of the red and white striped paper at 1 1/8 by 4 5/8, and I just layered those onto some white strips that are 1 1/4 by 4 3/4. I have that gingerbread paper, which I cut down to 3 1/4 by 2 and layered that at the top of this red solid cardstock. The red cardstock measures 3 3/8 by 5 7/8, and now I'm just positioning these striped panels right on top. And then the oval will go right on top of that. I'm also going to be bringing in a candy cane sticker, which I put right there in the middle of that oval. I did add some epoxy dots, and now I'm going to stamp a sentiment. The sentiment is from a Stamps of Life stamp set. It's called Gingerbread to Stamp. I'm just inking this up in some red ink, and the sentiment just says, "Have a sweet Christmas." Next, I'm going to add that card layer onto a mini slimline card base that measures 3 1/2 by 6. And to get the mini slimline card base, just take a piece of 8 1/2 by 11 piece of cardstock, cut it down to 7 by 6, and score at 3 1/2 inches on the 7-inch side. My next card is also going to be a mini slimline card. This is the Sketch Mojo Monday 408. So that white rectangle is 2 1/2 by 3 3/4, and just layered that onto a piece of green cardstock that's 2 5/8 by 3 7/8. And then I have this red pattern paper, which is 3 1/4 by 2 1/2, and I'm layering that onto the Snowflake pattern paper that measures 3 1/4 by 5 3/4. And then I'll layer that rectangle right on top, and then I have a green strip. This is actually cut out of the green polka dot pattern paper. I know it's very hard to see the polka dots on there, but it's one of the patterns in the paper pad. That measures 3 1/4 by 1/4. And then I layered that entire layer onto a piece of green solid cardstock from my stash that measures 3 3/8 by 5 7/8. And I'm adding a large Christmas tree sticker to that white rectangle. I'm also going to be bringing in another sticker that says Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. I am adding some foam dots behind that sticker, and I'm going to add it to the bottom left hand corner. I'm going to add that entire layer to a mini Slimline card base that measures 3.5 by 6, and I'm going to add a piece of twine that I tied in a bow, just adhering it with a glue dot to the bottom of that sentiment. I'm going to finish this up by adding some green epoxy dots, and here is a look at the card compared to the card sketch. So that will complete this card. And moving on to my next card, I'm using the MFT sketch 494. So I have a few ovals that I'm going to layer together. I have one cut out of solid red and one cut out of white. And the pattern paper with all of the words on it, that is cut to 4 by 5 1/4. Just layering that on a piece of solid red cardstock that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. The green plaid strip is 4 inches by 2 inches. I'm going to add that directly to the center of that card layer, and then I'm going to add the oval right on top in the center of that card. I'm adding 2 stickers to the oval, so I have the books at the bottom, and then on top of the books I have the pot with the sifter and then the milk and the candy cane. I also add the Christmas cheer sentiment sticker to that card front, and then I'll add that card front to an A2 size white card base that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. Now all of my A2 size card bases that I use in this video are purchased off of Amazon. I purchased them and they are already cut and pre-scored for me, so I just have to add the card front. So I added a few epoxy dots, and that will complete that card. My next card, I'm using an Operation Right Home bonus sketch, and I have the Santa paper that is measured at 3 1/4 by 4 3/4, and I'm going to layer that on a piece of black solid cardstock that's 3 3/8 by 4 7/8. And then the red and black plaid paper is 3 by 5, and that's going to be layered on black cardstock that's 3 1/8 by 5 1/8. And then I'm going to go ahead and position these 2 layers on my white A2 size card base. So this card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. So I'll layer the plaid one down first and the Santa one on top, and then I'm going to take this Santa sticker and stick it here at the bottom, and I'm going to use 2 stickers for the sentiment, and it says Very Merry Christmas. And that's going to complete this card. For my next card, I have a piece of red and white striped paper that measures 1 inch by 5 1/4, and the green checkerboard paper measures 4 by 2 3/4, and I'm adding that to a piece of green solid cardstock that's 4 1/8 by 2 7/8. So the gingerbread layer will go on a piece of the light brown solid cardstock, and that measures 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then I'll add the smaller rectangle piece on top of that. I'm going to just create a little scene with some of these stickers. So I'm just going to add the gingerbread house, the rolling pin, and I'm also going to bring in the sticker that says Mom's Famous Bake Shop, homemade and open every day. I'm also going to add a few gumdrops in the lower right hand corner, and then I will add that to an A2 size card base. And I'm going to finish up this card by adding just a few red epoxy dots to the left and right of the word Bake Shop. And that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm using the MFT card sketch number 208. I have some dotted oval die cuts that I'm going to layer together. So one is cut out of the pattern paper and the other is just out of red solid cardstock. Next, I have the pattern paper with all of the Christmas words on it. That is measured at 4 by 5 1/4, and I'm layering that on some brown cardstock, which is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I'll add the ovals right to the top in the center of that card layer. Next, I'm going to add some stickers. I'm going to start with a border sticker. So I'm going to add the scallop border sticker just right across the card like you see. I'm going to snip off the extra, and I'm going to add the gingerbread family above that. And then I'm also going to add a sticker that says Made with Sugar, Spice, and Lots of Christmas Magic. I'm going to add a few green epoxy dots to the oval, and I'm going to add this layer to an A2 size card base that I made myself. This is out of some red cardstock. And then I'm going to stamp out a sentiment on another dotted oval. This is just a white oval that I'm going to add to the center. The sentiment says wishing you a yummy holiday season, and that is from the Gingerbread stamp set from the Stamps of Life. For my next card, I'm using MFT 119 card sketch. And here are all the layers that I cut out. So I cut out the green pattern paper with a scalloped rectangle die, and I'm going to layer that onto a white A2 size card base. And then I have this strip of the red and green striped paper that measures 1 inch by 5.5 inches. So I'm going to add that on, and then I'll just snip off the bottom portion. So the total measurement of that is 1 inch by 5.5. And then I die cut the red pattern paper out of a stitched rectangle die. I'm going to layer that right on top, and then I have a stitched oval that's just die cut out of white solid cardstock that I'm going to put off to the right. I'm going to add the gingerbread house on the oval. I'm also going to bring in this little banner of candy, and I'm going to add that across the top. I'm just going to snip off the excess here. I'm also going to bring in a sentiment stamp. It says homemade with love. I'll add that to the card, and then I'll add some green epoxy dots to the front of this card. I stamped out a sentiment on the inside, have a sweet Christmas, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm using the Mojo Monday Sketch 502. So here's all my layers that I already pre-cut. So the largest snowflake layer is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. That will be layered onto a piece of green solid cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5.5. I cut a 2 3/4 inch stitched circle out of white cardstock. I'm going to layer that on a scalloped circle. And then I also have this striped candy cane paper. It's 4 1/8 by 2. I'm going to lay that across the width of my card layer. But first I'm going to go ahead and take this border sticker out. This border sticker is so cute. It has some gingerbread men, some peppermint, some candy canes, some gingerbread houses on it. So I'm going to go ahead and stick that down. And then I'll add that red and white striped paper right above that border. And then I'll add the green pattern paper on top of that. The green paper measures 3 by 3 1/4. And then once that's added, I will go ahead and add that oval right in the center. And then I'll go ahead and just flip that over and cut off the ends of that sticker border. So here I'm adding another sticker to the center. It's some hot chocolate and a few of the cookie stickers to the side of the mug, and then a few epoxy dots around the mug, and then that will go on top of a white A2 size card base. And lastly, I did add a red ribbon to the bottom left-hand corner of that scallop circle, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I'm going to add some sticker borders to this green polka dot pattern paper that measures 5 1/8 by 3 7/8. So I'm adding a candy stripe down at the bottom, and then there's a sentiment that says it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas right above that. And then at the top of this pattern paper, I'm adding the scallop with the peppermints. And then I add one more border to the bottom, which is slightly above that sentiment. And I wanted that border to make it look like a countertop, so I'm just going to add the mixer, a bunch of cookies there, as well as a wire whisk. So I'm just going to arrange those in some type of order there, and then I'm going to add a sticker that says have a yummy Christmas, and I will add that to another piece of striped pattern paper, and the striped pattern paper is 5 3/8 by 4, and then that's going to go on a piece of green solid cardstock that's 5 1/2 by 4 1/4, and that will go on an A2 size white card base, and that completes this card. For my next card, I'm using MFT 324 card sketch, and I have a white stitched circle that measures 2 3/4 inches, and I'm layering that on a 3-inch red circle. And then I have this green pattern paper that's 3 7/8 by 3, and then the wreath paper is 3 7/8. I cut it to about 4.5 inches, and then I just did the scalloped border at the bottom. So I'm layering all of those onto a piece of red cardstock that's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I did use the wreath sticker, and I also used a sentiment sticker strip that says Christmas cheer, and I backed that up on some foam so that it stands up, and then I put that on an A2 size white card base. So here's a look at the card next to the card sketch, and that will complete this card. So here's a look at the card sketch that I'm working off of for this card, and I've already cut all my layers. So I have a 2 3/4 inch white scallop circle and a 2 1/4 inch green stitch circle, and I'll layer those together. And the green polka dot pattern paper is 2 3/8 by 3.5. I don't know if you noticed, but that was a scrap. You can actually see that the little hole that was cut out at the bottom left hand corner. So definitely you can use the papers when they have the holes cut out at the top. You just need to cover up the holes strategically, just as you see that I'm doing here. So you can still get the most out of those papers even when they have the holes when they come in the paper pads. So that red checkerboard paper is 1 by 5 1/4. You can see how I've layered those on. That entire layer is going on a red solid piece of cardstock that's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And as for the stickers, I'm going to go ahead and incorporate Santa holding milk and cookies. So I'm actually going to just stick the milk and cookies there on his hand like it's all one sticker, and then I'm going to pop that right on the center of that circle. I'm also going to bring in some sentiment sticker strips. It says Christmas time greetings. They're actually 2 separate stickers. I'm just going to put them together, and then I'll add that to an A2 size white card base and add a few red epoxy dots, and that will complete that card. For my next card, I am using a sketch from Queen & Company. And I used the Queen & Company matching dies to cut these out. Queen & Company actually has dies that go along with all of their card sketches. So the scalloped rectangle and the stitched rectangle, I layered those together. And the holly paper measures 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. And that's layered on a piece of solid red cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then the checkerboard green printed paper is 2 by 4 1/8, and I just put that on the right edge of that pattern paper. And I'm adding a scalloped border sticker to the cover up where those pattern papers intersect. And then I will add the scalloped rectangle there to the left, and I'm going to add the Christmas tree sticker right inside of that rectangle. I am going to add the tag that says December 25th, Merry Christmas. It is a sticker, and I also tied a bow with some red twine and added the twine with a glue dot, and then I'll add that to a white A2 size card base, and that completes that card. For my next card, I'm using another sketch from Queen & Company. I cut out 3 white stitch circles that measure 1 1/4 inches. And I'm going to use those on the card. But first, I have this Christmas tree pattern paper that's 5 1/4 by 4, which I add to a piece of red solid cardstock that's 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. I also have this strip of red pattern paper. Again, you can see that was a piece of scrap paper. It has that hole in the middle, but that's okay. It's going to be covered up. And that red strip measures 5 1/4 inches by 1 inch. So there I'm just centering those circles, just making sure they have equal space between each circle. So I'm just putting my ruler there just to make sure that they do start at the same spot at the bottom, like just so that they're even along the bottom. And then I'm just going to add all 3 of those circles. And then I'm going to add some smaller stickers in the circles. So I have a gingerbread house, I have the gingerbread man with the candy cane, and then I have a couple gingerbread cookies. And then I'm just going to take some foam that I had in my stash, pop it on the back of the sticker. The sticker says a balanced diet is a Christmas cookie in each hand. So I'll pop that up, and then I'm just going to add some white twine around where the red strip is. I'm going to tie that in a bow off to the left hand side. And I'm just going to add a glue dot underneath the center of that bow just to make sure it stays down. And then I'll add that entire layer to a white A2 size card base. And I did stamp out Have a Sweet Christmas on the inside, and that will complete this card. For my next card, I have a white stitched circle that measures 3 inches, and I'm layering that onto a green scallop circle that's 3 3/8 inches. I also have this piece of red pattern paper that's 5 1/4 by 4. I'm layering that onto a piece of white cardstock that's 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and that will be layered onto a piece of green cardstock that's 5 1/2 by 4 1/4. I also have a banner die cut piece. I cut that out of the pattern paper with the words on it. I'm going to layer that underneath of the scalloped circle. So I'll add that scalloped circle directly on top. I'm positioned off there to the right hand side. I am going to be adding some stickers to this circle. So I'll start out with the candy jar right in the center of the circle, and I will add a few gumdrops at the bottom. I'm also going to add a sentiment sticker that says "Have yourself a merry little Christmas." I am going to pop it up on some foam just so that it stands up off of the card, and I'll add it there to the center of the banner and sort of on top of the circle as well. Add a few epoxy dots in green, and then I'm going to add that to a white A2 size card base, and that will complete this card. For my next 4 cards, I am going to use this sheet of 3x3 cut-aparts. So I'm going to show you some different layouts that you can use with these 3x3 cut-apart squares. So this first card is going to be off of the Paper Play 24 card sketch. So I have my 3x3 cut-apart. It says "Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year" that I backed onto a white square that measures 3 1/8 by 3 1/8, and then I have the red and black plaid paper that's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I added a piece of snowflake pattern paper that's 2 3/4 by 5 3/8. That red and white strip of pattern paper was actually from the top of the cut apart piece of pattern paper, so I went ahead and used that there behind the 3x3 cut apart piece. And that strip, it actually measures 4 1/8 by 1/2 inch. And then I just layered that entire card layer onto an A2 size white card base. And then I added a few white snowflakes from my stash. I just had a die in my stash that I cut the snowflakes from, and then added some epoxy dots to the center. And that completes that card. And moving on to my next card, I'm using this Mojo Monday Sketch 479. So there I'm backing up the 3x3 cut apart onto a piece of black cardstock that measures 3 1/8 by 3 1/8. And the snowflake pattern paper is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I'm backing that up onto a piece of black solid cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And here is a circle. You can see that I'm using every piece of the pattern paper because it has the little hole cut out. So I'm just going to cover that portion of the hole up, and it's going to be layered underneath the 3x3. And then I have that strip of green plaid paper, and that's 1 5/8 by 4 1/2. So I'll just layer all of those up there, and then I'm going to add that entire layer to an A2 size white card base. I do add some green epoxy dots to the centers of some of the snowflakes on the 3x3 card, and that completes that card. So moving on, I'm using Mojo Monday Card Sketch 492. So I have this piece of pattern paper that measures 3 5/8 by 4 3/8, which I'm layering onto a piece of solid green cardstock that's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then that red plaid paper is 2 1/2 by 4, and I'm going to cover that hole up with that 3x3 card. So there is a piece of red and white stripe paper underneath that, and that is 4 1/4 by 5/8 inches. So just layer all those up, and then I did tie a bow in some red ribbon. I'm just going to add to the bottom left hand corner and add a few red epoxy dots next to the word sparkle. And that will complete that card. So for my next card, I'm using the Operation Right Home Sketch 115. So here's all my layers. So I'll start with my 3x3 card. I'll layer that onto a piece of red cardstock that's 3 1/8 by 3 1/8. And this tree pattern paper is 5 1/4 by 1. I'm going to layer that onto some red solid cardstock that is 5 1/4 by 1 1/8. So it's only slightly smaller at the top and bottom. I'm going to trim off this side here so that it's even with the Christmas tree paper. And then I have this stripe pattern paper that's 4 by 3 1/2. I'll layer that onto a piece of red cardstock that's 4 1/8 by 3 5/8. And then the Santa paper is 4 by 5 1/4, and that'll be layered onto the red cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So now I have all of my layers, and now I'll go ahead and start assembling my card. So I'm going to put the red and green striped paper on first, on top of the Santa paper, a little bit off to the left side. So we'll go ahead and glue that down. Then I'm going to add the Christmas tree strip along the bottom portion. What I'm doing here is I'm actually taking just some scrap cardstock. I am just cutting it down to size, and I'm just putting it on the back of this strip because I want this strip to lay flat on the card, and if the scrap paper is not there, it's not going to lay flat because there's already 2 layers of cardstock underneath it on the left side. So just by adding those extra layers of cardstock underneath that little small right portion of that strip, it's going to help it lay flat. And I'm going to do the same thing here. There's a little piece of that Cookies for Santa paper that's going off the side there, and it just needs to have some cardstock built up so that it lays flat on the card. Okay, so that is going to go on an A2 size white card base, and I will add some green epoxy dots, and that's going to finish up my card. So here's a look at the card compared to the card sketch. So for my next card, there is this pattern paper that has these little squares with the little pictures on them. I'm going to cut those apart, and then at the bottom of that paper has these 2 larger cut-aparts. So I'm going to be making a slimline card using the 3 cut-aparts that were at the top of that pattern paper. And this die that I have is from Trinity Stamps. So I'm using this center die with the 3 squares to die cut some pattern paper scraps to get those plaid stitched squares, and then I'm going to take that same triple square die and I'm going to layer it inside the next larger just rectangle die cut that out of some white cardstock to get this piece that you see here. Next, I'm going to take the next layer, the next largest rectangle. I'm going to die cut a piece of green cardstock, and I'm going to get this stitched rectangle, and then I'm going to take the largest rectangle in the set, and I'm going to die cut a piece of red solid cardstock to get this layer. And of course, I'll be using a slimline size card base, which I created myself. This is just a piece of white cardstock. The base itself is 8 1/2 by 3 1/2, so I took a piece of 8 1/2 by 11 sheet of white cardstock, cut it down to 8 1/2 by 7, and then scored it at 3 1/2 inches on the 7-inch side. So now I'm going to go ahead and put my card together. So I'm going to layer the green stitched rectangle on top of the red stitched rectangle, and then I'm going to take the white piece with the square cutouts and layer that directly on top. Then I'm going to put those stitched square pieces that are in the red and black plaid paper. I'm just going to pop those right in the center of the white layer, and then I'm going to add my squares. So I'm just going to glue each one of those squares with the pictures on them right to the center. Now I did have to trim down those squares just a little bit smaller so that when they fit inside of those square shapes, that some of that red pattern paper displays on the edge. And then I just added that to a slimline card base. And then for the sentiment, I'm going to use a sticker from the sticker pad that says, "Nothing says home like the smell of Christmas cookies baking." And then I'm going to add some green epoxy dots on the left and right side of that sentiment strip. So here's just a look at another card that I made using some other cut-aparts from the paper pad. It's identical to the first one, but the sentiment strip says, "May your Christmas sparkle with love, laughter, and goodwill." So for my next card, I'm using the card sketch Operation Right Home number 37, and I'm going to be using the cut-apart of the Christmas tree with the Happy Holidays that was from the same piece of paper from the previous previous card. So that Christmas tree cut apart is a 3x4 card, and I'm just backing that up on a piece of green solid cardstock that's 3 1/8 by 4 1/8. And then I have another piece of green solid cardstock that's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I'm going to layer on the Season's Greetings, Happy Holidays, that red print pattern paper, which is 1 7/8 by 4 3/4. And then the green and red stripe paper is 3 1/2 by 2 7/8. So just layer all of those on, and then that's going to go on a white A2 size card base. And then to finish that up, I will add some red epoxy dots. So here's a look at the card next to the card sketch, and I actually created two, although the one on the right is slightly different in that I extended the red pattern paper all the way from the top to the bottom of the card layer, and then the green Christmas tree paper is extended all the way from the left to right side. So here's another look at these cards. So moving on, I have a piece of brown pattern paper that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I have two banners that I cut out of some Queen & Company dies. So I'm just going to layer those together and add them to the brown pattern paper. I'm going to add this tall cake, and I'm also going to add this little banner up here at the top. This banner has some popcorn, and it looks like it might have some gumballs in between the popcorn. So I'm just going to add that, and then I'm going to add a sentiment that says special delivery, but I'm going to back it up on some white cardstock. So I just have this banner that I die cut out of a banner die, and I'm just trimming it down so that it has some white edges on the special delivery sentiment. Otherwise that sentiment would be blending in with the brown pattern paper, and I didn't want it to blend in. I also popped that sentiment up on some foam, and then I'll put that on an A2 size white card base. So for my next few cards, I'm going to be using these tags. Now the mega pack of this paper pad includes these tags, and I don't think that the smaller pack includes them. So if you have the smaller pack, you may not have these tags in your paper pad. So I'm just cutting them apart. Now you can totally use these tags as tags on gifts, but I just want to show you a few layouts of how you can use these tags on cards. So I cut that striped paper to 4 by 4 1/8, and then the tree pattern paper to 4 by 2. Just layered those onto a piece of solid green cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I did use a ribbon to just tie around where those pattern papers meet, and then I just added the tag there. And when I cut those tags, I did leave that red border around the tag. I thought that border made it stand out a little bit more. And then I just tied another ribbon, put a glue dot on the back, and then added it to the center of the tag to cover up the hole. And then I'll just add that to an A2 size card base. So I'm going to add just a few epoxy dots there, and then you can see the card sketch that I used is the OWH67. So I created another card with the same pattern papers, just reverse the order, and the other one says Christmas Wishes. So moving on, I am using a card sketch from Queen & Company. So I have a piece of red solid cardstock that's 5 3/8 by 4 1/8, and then I have these rounded corner stitched square dies. I die cut 4 out of the pattern paper. The squares are 1 3/4 inches, so if you don't have these dies, you can totally just cut a square that's 1 3/4 inches, and then just layer them so that they are centered on the solid red cardstock. And this card is going to be pretty simple. I'm just going to add the pieces of pattern paper, and then I'm going to put a tag there in the middle. So you can see the tag that's laying on the table. It has the wreath and it says cheer on it. So I'll go ahead and add that to the center. And then I'll add that to an A2 size card base. I also tied a green bow, and I'll just put a glue dot on the back of the center of the bow and add it to the tag. Add a few green epoxy dots next to the word cheer, and that will complete this card. So for my next card, I am using this sticker border, and I'm going to add it across the left side of the gingerbread paper, and that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. I'm going to add the Happy Holidays tag with the gingerbread house on there. And I'm just going to add a bow to the left side of the tag and add the Gingerbread family sticker. Add that to a red piece of cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and then add that to an A2 size card base, and that completes that card. So this card is going to be very similar to the previous one, only this time I want to add a small black border around my tag. So I just glued the tag down to some of the black cardstock, and I'm just cutting around it so that it has a slightly small black border around the edge. And then here I'm just going to snip off the corners. And then I have a piece of this Santa paper. It is just a strip of the Santas, and then I'm just putting a very small piece of black solid cardstock along the edge, and then I'm going to layer that on to that red and white striped paper that measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I'm going to layer that onto a solid piece of black cardstock, and that black cardstock is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So you can see there's just a slight piece of black on that card. It just makes it stand out really nice against the red and the white. And it also brings out the black in the Santa boots. So I'm going to add that to an A2 size card base and add some twine on the tag, and that will complete that card. So once again, here's a look at those two cards. Very similar layout. One uses a sticker as a border and one uses pattern paper as a border. So for my last two cards, I am using this die. This die is a Slimline die from Whimsy Stamps. It's a window die, and I'm just using some scraps of pattern paper. I love using dies like this when I have lots of scraps left over, because I can just die cut these little windows out of just scraps of pattern paper that I have left over and get these little windows. So I'm just positioning them on the die, just taping them down. I'm going to run that through my die cut machine. I also took that die and die cut a frame, and the frame is just out of some solid white cardstock, and I added that to a Slimline card base. And here I'm just going to go ahead and add all of these little window pieces right back into the framed border. Next, I'm going to add some stickers to all of these little windows. So I have lots of these little stickers that are sweets, some candy, some cakes. So I'm just picking ones that will fit within the little windows and adding them. That center rectangle is going to be used for a sentiment. So there are all of these sentiment strips, which I really didn't even use any of these sentiment strips in any of my cards, but these last two cards I do use the sentiment strips. So this one says "Have a Merry Christmas." I created a second card using more of those stickers and another sentiment strip, and that second sentiment strip says "Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year." So here's a look at both of my Slimline cards, just using up some scraps. So I would love for you to leave me a comment down below and let me know if you had a favorite card. And remember that all product links will be down in the description box of this YouTube video, as well as on my blog, and all card measurements will be on my blog at www.lisamearsdesigns.com. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and be sure to subscribe for more card making tutorials. Thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye-bye.